welcome back to Talk Talk Live here on IG and YouTube. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Sponsored by DunTalk.com. Thank you for joining me yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty darn good show in which we discussed the red pill and a black man from wearing a MAGA hat as a black man. It was something to behold, anyways. But yes. But we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live in IG and YouTube. Yes, I finally forgot. Jesus. I was taking it back there for a second. Yes, indeed. So IG and YouTube, yes, indeed. And like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So yes. Oh, let me do this quickly. Bang. That's a bit silly. Anyways, so we're back. We're live. And hope all is well with you on this fall day. Yes, indeed. On Taylor Swift Eve. Yes. Seems that Madam Kelsey, Miss Kelsey, is going to be soon in town to regale the women and children. So again, that should be fun and fun for them. But again, I'm staying out of downtown core for the next few days and weeks. So again, I would say week. She's here for six shows or something like that. Some stunning number, anyways. But there you go. Such is her might and power in the popular music space. So again, to all those who are going, wish you all the best. But again, count me out. But anyways, we're back. We're here. We're live on Talk Talk Live, and thank you very much for joining me. And we're going to be discussing why 63%. We're going to be discussing what a lot of men will be doing during this Taylor concert, and that is be single. That is be without a woman by their side, as has been said. As by modern statistics, 63% of men are indeed single. Yes, indeed. And we discussed at length why, the reasons why here on Talk Talk Live. But I want to get a female woman's perspective. So this has been cooking for a little while. It's been cooking since the presidential election and a few other scandals like Diddy and such. So I've held on to this for a little bit. But I'm about to release it right now. I'm about to talk about it right now. And this is from a female and a woman's perspective. Well, female and a woman, yeah, well, they're usually one and the same. Get used to it. So, so from a woman's perspective, we want to see why, indeed, 63% of men are single. So we're going to discuss that tonight on Talk Talk Live. And thank you very much for joining me. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Let's get into this. And again, indeed, sponsored by Dun Talk. So let's get it. Let's get it. And be good at it. Okay. Oh, wait. Before I do that, yes, go to the browser. Yes, indeed. And we're going to go full cam. Bang, bang. Thank you, man. All right. So let's get on in with this because we have a few videos to go through because there is a part 1 and 2. So we are going to go through them ad litem and we're going to see why, indeed, 63% of men are indeed single in 2 parts. But again, let us get into it right now on Talk Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me. And without further ado,
battery 100%. Take a 50,000-foot view of the situation and look at why people do or don't do certain things. Neurologically speaking, every action that humans take is either to pursue pleasure or avoid pain. So if a large group, particularly men in this situation, are abstaining from relationships, it's probably because they're chasing something that they perceive to be as better, or avoiding the stress and challenges that relationships can bring. To zoom back in, we need to explore the societal motivators that are pushing 63% of men to remain single. So in this video, I'm going to go over the 6 key factors that are contributing to this overall trend. Let's get into it. Which brings me to my first point. Let's start with something that's been quietly affecting millions of men for years: low testosterone. Now, testosterone isn't just about muscles and aggression. It's critical for sex drive, mood, and overall energy. Imagine a young man in his early 20s who, despite being physically healthy, struggles with low energy and a lack of interest in intimacy. He might not recognize that his testosterone levels are at an all-time low. And it's not just him. This is happening to millions of men across the country. Studies have shown that testosterone levels in men have been declining for decades, with a significant drop observed in men as young as 25. And low testosterone can lead to decreased libido, contributing to the overall lack of interest in sexual intimacy. Low testosterone level.
I'm sure she'll get into it right now, but low testosterone is indeed a problem, especially with men, and especially in a lifestyle and in an age where it is easy. Well, men don't work as hard. Men don't do as laborious as a job. Men don't till land as they used to, which involves a lot of testosterone. And men don't take pride in their physique as they used to be. Men tend to be sedentary. Men tend to, just not be as physically active as they once were. Let's continue.
Can also significantly impact men's mental health, affecting mood, cognition, and overall psychological well-being. Testosterone is a hormone that plays crucial levels in lots of bodily functions, and when testosterone levels drop, it can lead to a wide array of negative impacts. Some of these things, from a psychological level, I'm going to outline here. Depression is one of the most common psychological issues when it comes to low testosterone levels in men. Study after study has shown that men with low testosterone levels tend to experience massive symptoms of depression. This includes persistent sadness, loss of interest in their activities, and feelings of hopelessness. Testosterone is thought to influence.
And you see that, you saw that most recently in the Kamala Harris defeat, when where a lot of men who supported the Democratic Party, a lot of them got on TikTok and started crying. Yes, they started crying, started weeping, started showing symptoms of depression. Showing you that not a lot is going on in their sex life or in their work life. But let's continue.
Neurotransmitters in the brain, such as serotonin, which plays a critical role in overall mood regulation. Low testosterone can also lead to increased levels of anxiety, and men with low test will experience heightened levels of stress, which can exacerbate the feelings of unease and worry. A study published in the Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism found that men with low testosterone levels were more likely to be diagnosed with depression. And as far as a solution, while testosterone replacement therapy has become more and more popular. The second thing we have to look at is cognitive function. And how
just to let you know what testosterone replacement therapy is the actual injection of a testosterone into men. So they would get a prescription, they would go to a doctor, and they would actually obtain shots of testosterone ethanoate or testosterone acetylate in order for men to, get a boost so that they can feel a little... Thank you, Golden Type, for that. Yes, indeed. You're right. You're right. Thank you for that reminder. But again, we go on with the show, and thank you for your support. Indeed, indeed, indeed. So yes, but yes, indeed, testosterone is a bit of a Well, when you're low, you get a top up. And that's what testosterone is, and this is especially true with regards to weightlifters. Especially if they can't make their own testosterone, they get injections of testosterone, and that's what keeps them in the muscle, and also virile and horny, to be fair. Let's continue.
How low T impacts this. Low testosterone has been linked with overall cognitive decline, including issues with memory, attention, and overall executive function. Men with low test often experience symptoms of brain fog, which is categorized with symptoms like difficulty concentrating, poor memory, and slower processing speed. And some research suggests that lower testosterone levels also increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease. Although more research is absolutely needed for this, it's important to understand the impact from an overall well-being and psychological executive functioning position when it comes to this problem that we're seeing with men all over the country. Regarding this line, testosterone does have neuroprotective effects, and so a deficiency in testosterone, that makes you more susceptible to losing your mind. Another critical impact when it comes to testosterone is the impact that it has on overall motivation. Low testosterone levels are often associated with high levels of fatigue, and if men who are known to be ambitious and highly productive are struggling with low energy levels, not only does it tank their motivation, but it tanks their self-esteem. Men with low test might experience really, really high levels of fatigue even after getting plenty of sleep, and this can lead them to further isolation as they don't even feel motivated or inclined to engage in daily activities. And this over a long enough time horizon, it will impact things like work, relationships, and overall quality of life. Now you might be wondering what...
Okay, and she's absolutely right in that if you don't have any high levels or normal levels of testosterone, you don't feel like working. You feel listless. You feel lazy. You have brain fog. You can't make critical decisions. In other words, you can function as a man. You literally can function as a man. Lana BK says, let's keep in mind both men and women have testosterone and estrogen. Yes, indeed. We have both levels of testosterone and estrogen. You're absolutely right there, Lana BK. Thank you very much for your comment. And but again, it is important that men have an adequate amount of testosterone through physical and through sexual activity. But let's continue.
What does this have anything to do with relationships? Well, men with low testosterone also experience elevated levels of irritability and increased emotional instability. And this can manifest itself as increased anger, frustration, or mood swings. Yes, men have mood swings too. And this will lead to overall further isolation and complete social withdrawal. And when testosterone levels in men are low, men find themselves more prone to emotional outbursts or difficulty managing stress and overall negative emotion. And if you
So we see this in a lot. We see this a lot in, well, as they call in involuntary celibates or incels, and with that, so with that, they tend to come up with emotional outbursts. They tend to be emotionally unstable, and that is an issue that is a problem for society, because if they're emotionally unstable and they are emotionally unstable and they are unable to handle such instability, then they either take it out of themselves or they take it out on society. So having a a huge level of men with low testosterone is not only dangerous for the man himself, but also for society at large, because they could take out their stress or their lack of emotional stability, because men are supposed to be emotional rocks, onto the public. And so yeah, so you see why there are violent outbursts on society in which many people are susceptible to be victims. Let's continue.
play this out over a long enough time horizon, well, this will absolutely impact men's self-esteem and overall confidence. When testosterone levels in men drop, they tend to experience a decrease in self-worth, and this can lead to feelings of inadequacy or further feelings of insecurity. And this will absolutely impact their ability to go out and have social interactions, and it definitely stifles their willingness to pursue new opportunities. And due to the low self-esteem and lower confidence as they continue to withdraw, it's going to further exacerbate the feelings of isolation and loneliness, and this will then negatively impact their overall mental state and well-being. And this concept around men's testosterone and self-esteem isn't just my opinion. A study in psychoneuroendocrinology, I know, what a word, found that men with lower testosterone levels self-report lower self-esteem and confidence. Research also shows that testosterone levels in men can fluctuate in response to social and sexual interactions, and this can happen in various ways. Testosterone levels in men can elevate when they are in competitive or dominant social situations, especially when interacting with women. For example, studies have shown that men's testosterone levels increase when they are competing for attention or when they perceive themselves to be winning in a social situation. Conversely, testosterone levels can decrease if a man perceives himself to be less dominant or loses in a competitive situation. And I want you to remember this point because it will be important later on. Next, we have to touch on the impact of romantic relations and men's testosterone.
Okay, before we go there, you're absolutely. The lady, Kate and Michelle, and please go and like and subscribe to Kate and Michelle's study here, because it is quite something to learn from, and a lot of research has been done on this. So go and support Kate and Michelle on this project. I'm just here to criticize yay or nay. Golden Tide says they will box up innocent Oman. Yeah, well, that's right. Women. Men can take it out on their women if they have women at all. But what's happening now, Golden Type, is that men are totally regressing from any sort of relationships. They don't get the chance to box up innocent women. They basically box up themselves or box up society. So that is the ultimate difference here, and that now men who are emotional or who are less who lack the confidence and the ability to go out in social interactions, they tend to have less testosterone. They lack confidence to go out and speak to people, speak to women, speak to anybody, and live a relatively normal, if not better, light. and also the fact that a lot of these men, with those inabilities, they tend not to have sex. They tend not to have relationships. If you don't have confidence in and of yourself, and keep your and have a testosterone at a normal level, chances are you will regress. You will take a step back, and you will literally, be one of the forgotten ones of society. So it is important that any way you can, either through injection, which I don't usually advocate, but first, especially, getting physical exercise, actually, working out to a certain extent, either 2 or 3 times a week. It helps raise endorphins. It helps you physically, and it helps you be mentally and physically sharper as well. It is key to you staying in the game, both in the sexual marketplace and also in social interactions and in society at large. Let's continue.
Levels. Men often experience a temporary increase in testosterone production when they are interacting with a potential partner or someone they find attractive. This is part of a natural physiological response that prepares the body for potential mating opportunities. Interestingly, though, once men actually enter into a committed relationship, their testosterone levels may decrease, and this decrease is thought.
And do remember that we are on IG and YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, so if you want to comment in IG or YouTube, I am watching both comments. So, again, looking forward to what you have to say about this subject. Let's continue.
To promote caregiving behaviors, which are beneficial long term in the context of that relationship. But relative to this topic, this isn't really happening. So while there is evidence that men's testosterone levels do decline once they get into a relationship, men aren't actually getting in relationships. Now, obviously, engaging in sexual activity can increase testosterone levels. The anticipation of sex, as well as the act itself, has been shown to boost testosterone levels in men acutely. And regular sexual activity has actually been shown to maintain higher levels of testosterone at a baseline for men, specifically over time. But now we have to talk about the things that actually matter.
So indeed, when it comes to, romantic encounters and sexual activity, testosterone is extremely important. You can't get it up, quote unquote, can't get it up without testosterone. It's one of the key components to sexual activity. Yes, sex happens in the mind, but definitely sex happens in our hormones, which allow us to perform. And if one cannot perform, then you might as well be out of the game. So having the chance at sex and having sex is key when it comes to testosterone. You need testosterone in order to achieve any of these things. And that leads to having a family, leading that family. All these things, you are in need of some sort of testosterone. That's how serious the hormone is.
In this context, which is why testosterone levels might be declining. Negative interactions for men in particular, such as rejection or social stress, lead to a decrease in overall testosterone production. Now, carry that over into the stress related to conflict in a relationship, we can see how this would exacerbate the impact. Now, as a side note, a lot of men who do get into relationships do struggle with lower testosterone levels. And one of the important things that I want you to have is that men, once they become fathers, also see a decline in testosterone production. And this, again, is to facilitate nurturing behavior and kind of bring down the levels of aggression that men naturally embody with higher levels of testosterone, especially with the presence of an infant. But the important takeaway relative to the topic of why men are single, understanding that the impact that a social interaction has, specifically with a female that they find attractive or someone they might be pursuing, if that experience for them is negative, it's going to negatively impact their overall physiology, increasing stress and decreasing production of testosterone.
So there you go. Testosterone is so very key on so many levels. It's key for you to get into a relationship. It's key to have sex. It's key to you being getting into a relationship, getting into a marriage. Now, as she said, as fatherhood enters, as Lana BK stated previously, your estrogen levels turn up because your nurturing levels increase as well. And that's why it's sometimes said that being a father, you lose your edge as a man because your testosterone lowers. and as was alluded to by Kate here. However, in order for you to get in the game, in order for you to have sex, in order for you to do anything possible for you to have a chance to add fatherhood and lower that testosterone, you need testosterone. You need testosterone in everything you do as a man. It's what makes you a man. So having lower levels of testosterone, meaning that we have lower levels of true men out there, if you think about it. Let's continue.
Brings me to my next point of why men are struggling to get into relationships, or why the majority of them are maintaining their status of being single. We have to talk about the impact of current culture and society with an abundance of fatherless homes. We've heard of women having daddy issues, but we don't necessarily talk about the impact of men growing up without a father and how that can lead to further issues. Without a strong male role model, many men struggle to develop confidence and the social skills that are required for them to navigate a intimate relationship. Think about a young boy growing up without his father around. He might be raised by a super strong, incredibly caregiving and nurturing mother, but there's still a void in his understanding of what it means to be a man in a relationship. And this lack of guidance can manifest itself as insecurity or complete avoidance, or more importantly, driving super toxic dynamics within relationships that they cultivate, especially if his interaction with his mother was, well, volatile. Fatherless homes have been linked to a range of social challenges, including the difficulty of forming healthy romantic relationships. Without the tools and examples provided by a healthy father figure, men will find themselves unequipped to engage in meaningful relationships. And this is because
Stop there for a second. That is indeed very, very key. And most women don't realize this. Every male child needs an example in his life so he can have a proper start at forming relationships with women. And just because you have a strong, capable mother there's something missing. You need a male role model in your life in order for you to gain that confidence to start relationships. And most of those relationships have to be with men. Point blank, period. You can say what you will about single mothers and the job that they do, and there are some incredible single mothers out there. I know some of them, but it doesn't replace a man's place in a male child's life. I think a lot of children are softer and more emotional these days simply because there have been no male role models available to many children. Many children. I just saw today a man having to open up a school to teach kids how to change a tire, how to check on an engine, how to have proper etiquette around women, how to meet women, how to greet women, how to just basically give them male skills in order to function in order to be a proper functioning adult. That's going to be so much more key as we move on into the next 20 to 30 to 40, 50 years. Because there are more single parent homes these days. And that's why I say for a lot of male children, it is best for them to be with their dads than their mothers. Because at least with their dads, they get some sort of male tutelage on how to be a man or how to be a young man. Because they learn by example, if you know what I mean. Let's continue.
Role in the development of a healthy masculine in their sons. And this influence is multifaceted, encompassing direct behavioral modeling, emotional support, and the provision of a secure environment where boys can explore their identity and learn the strong form of a healthy masculine. Through everyday interactions, boys learn about assertiveness, problem solving, and how to balance traditionally masculine traits like strength with emotional intelligence. And for fathers who model healthy masculinity, demonstrating respect, empathy, and responsible behavior, equip their sons with the tools to navigate moving into manhood in a healthy way. Now, in another really important note, especially around cultural standards and the pressure that we put on men, specifically when it comes to their emotions, is that fathers who are present and emotionally available for their sons can help them learn to work through their emotions as they continue to grow. And this counters the cultural pressure for boys and men to continue to suppress their emotional state. And this can lead to issues like overall aggression or emotional detachment later on in life. Now, lastly, especially as a clinical psych student, I have to touch on the importance of rough and tumble play. This is a form of physical interaction that often occurs between father and son, and this plays a significant role in the overall development of social and emotional skills. It helps boys learn to regulate their emotions as they go through play, build restraint around their impulses, and understand boundaries while cultivating overall levels of resilience. During rough and tumble play, boys learn the difference between playful aggression and real aggression, and this again helps them to develop overall self-control and also understand other people's social cues. So without this, you can see how the development and manifestation of a man's aggression without the understanding of when is too much can lead to negative consequences, not just for them, but for the people around them. So it may not feel like it's that important when it comes to why men are single. I think it's really important to discuss the absent father issue that we have.
Okay, just before we get into that, because lack of male role models is huge. It is absolutely huge. It must be said that indeed, having a man to model rough and tumble play lets men, well, it lets young boys know when it's too much, when there's too much aggression, there's too little aggression, and it basically regulates a child's behavior, if you know what I mean. It's not as if that this can't be found in women, but definitely through men, you can see, boys can understand when things are taken too far or when to limit their behavior, and it is, and you see it in the animal kingdom as well in human beings as well. Is that kids learn through play. Kids learn how to hunt in the animal kingdom. Kids learn how to act in society in humanity. And it's better to learn from a man what behaviors and what activities is tolerable and what are not, and when to hold back and when to and when to and actually have consent, and learn about consent, because again, these are things that men understand to a certain extent if they understand the sexual marketplace, and more so than women, because women haven't had to obtain consent from a male point of view. Let's continue.
In our current culture. Without a father or a positive male role model, men don't get the skills or understanding of how to navigate things, especially interpersonally. We learn, all of our behavior is learned, and we tend to learn it by observing our parents, specifically at a very young age. And fathers are important when it comes to modeling how to treat a partner with respect, and vice versa for women, but the conversation today is about men. How do you manage your emotions? How do you address conflict? How do you communicate effectively? And when boys grow up without witnessing these dynamics, it can manifest as dysfunctional, but the problem is they just were never taught how. And if
let's run that thing back, as I talked to you before, I want to just run that comment back right there, and I'll let her play it again.
Conflict, how do you communicate effectively? And when boys grow up without witnessing these dynamics, it can manifest as dysfunctional, but the problem is they just were never.
It can manifest itself as dysfunctional, but the problem is they were never taught how. Yes. That's exactly why a man is needed in the home. They need to be taught how. They need to know, have that know-how. They need to have that sort of tutelage, that sort of teaching that is needed in order to be a man. How to handle yourself in society. No doubt about that. That's why I say if it came down to boys being separate, being a part of divorce, it's better they go with their fathers than their mothers, because at least then they will learn the proper tools, if that man can function in society, on how to be a man. It's as simple as that. As great as mothers can be, as great as single mothers can be, men are needed at critical times, especially in their preteen to teen years. Because that is how you learn to be a man. That is how you learn to be a gentleman. There's the key. Learn how to be a gentleman. I would have not learned how to be a gentleman if I didn't learn from a gentleman, my father. I would have never learned chivalry, of how to interact in dates and how to carry yourself in certain spaces, if not from my father. And that is what's missing from so many kids these days. And it is hoped that through these programs here, and through many programs and certain boys clubs, and also through sport, because that is where you find a lot of these men, how to behave in certain society, in certain social strata. So I would implore women, if they have young sons, to engage them in sports, because that's where you learn a lot about life, especially from a younger age. Is through sport. You learn about cooperation. You learn about teamwork. You learn about how to handle yourself in certain when you win and when you lose. So, team sport is so integral to any male child's upbringing. Let's continue.
We're taught how. And if we look into the psychological impacts around this, I'm sure you've heard of attachment styles. But if you haven't, I'm just going to cover the theory here. Attachment theory suggests that children form their initial understanding of relationships through their interactions with their primary caregivers. So when a father is absent, it can disrupt the secure attachment that is required for developing both trust and confidence in the pursuit of a relationship. So for the children who are raised without a father figure, and this is for both parents as well. So when we look at the problem with boys being raised without fathers, we can see how this can lead to them developing an insecure attachment style. And this will absolutely exacerbate problems and challenges when it comes to creating a stable and healthy romantic bond, especially if they build a fear or core belief that amplifies anxiety around the experience of abandonment. And this will lead to a reluctance to engage and absolutely perpetuate trust issues. Now, the last part here around the importance of a father figure, I have to touch on the self-concept and what it means to be a man. The absence of a father can lead to complete confusion around gender roles and self-identity. Boys may struggle and tend to understand what it means to be a man, which can lead to insecurity or overcompensation in their adult life. And the overcompensation complex is either hypermasculine behaviors that can be incredibly toxic, or complete passivity in relationships, which can also be toxic. And this is because they don't have the skill set or tools to understand how to balance and navigate and validate their natural aggression when it comes to their behavior, and also have the emotional intelligence and skills to communicate around how their partner's needs need to be met, as well as.
So, as we before she goes on there, if you go on both extremes, in terms of the concept,
validating their own, and as we can guess
here, let me stop there for a second. So being overcompensation for your masculinity, the negative aspect of being overcompensating your masculinity is that you become, well, relatively highly violent. That is why 80% of men who are in prisons come from single parent homes. More than likely single mother homes, because men don't know how to deal with conflict resolution. They want to prove their manhood, and with that, they go to the extremes in which men will tend to commit a crime, if not commit acts against other men, and so that would end them up in jail. Atlanta BK offers. Interesting that this study is being highlighted by women and not men. Absolutely, and I think this woman is a psychology student, so again, she would have the necessary research, because, again, to be fair, this is where women can excel in certain ways in terms of learning these things. Is that women have the ability when involved in school. That's why when let me say this. As women are in college, and there are, the ratio for women way outnumbers men in terms of college and university attendance, this is where they can do the necessary research in certain areas, such as psychology, which is highly, highly female, into these certain subject matters. And so that's where I go back to Lana BK's comment, and that she has the ability to comment on these issues because she has full access to these certain subjects. There are men who do so as well. If you look at Dr. Scott Galloway, he's another man who that I've highlighted on this show frequently, who has major access to these sort of studies, and he quotes them ad litem. So if you have the access to these studies and these quote and these percentages um, and the result of these studies, then it's a better chance that you have a better hold of this subject, especially when it comes to into bachelor studies and also master studies, which women tend to dominate in terms of attendance. But again, men are available to these studies as well. So, but again, you have to be in those circles in order to obtain that information. But again, getting back to the subject I was talking about, when you overcompensate, in terms of your masculinity, you end up in jail. When you undercompensate in terms of when there's an undercompensation complex in terms of masculinity, men tend to be meek, mild, and turn into incels because they don't know how to use their testosterone to their advantage, and so they socially regress, and therefore, you know, uh, they tend not to be a part of society and meaningful parts of society in terms of romantic relationships and building of families and being involved in the sexual marketplace. Let's continue.
This is going to lead to overall amplifications of adversarial interactions and not having the ability to find resolution within those conflicts. And this, over time, as a pattern, will lead to up and down, a roller coaster of chaos when it comes to trying to engage with something akin to long-term commitment without having the skills to actually navigate that terrain. Which brings me to my next point. We have to talk a little bit about feminism. The feminist movement in itself has absolutely reshaped the gender dynamics within our culture, and this has had a complex and profound impact on men's interactions in romantic relationships. While the movement has largely focused on promoting gender equality and overall the empowerment of women, which was and is incredibly important, it has also led to shifts and consequences with how men show up, behave, and find stability within relationship or in society. And this is because the feminist movement went to challenge the historical gender norms, which has led to extended pressure for men to engage in more egalitarian relationships. And for men, this can create some discomfort, especially those who were socialized and raised under more traditional values and those historic views of masculinity. And this meaning, tactically, that they were the primary breadwinners within the dynamic of their relationship and the key decision maker when it came to moving forward with the long-term plans within that relationship. But as women gain more education and more economic independence, pairing that with some levels of more assertiveness, or as men would say, masculine women, men feel uncertain of how they fit into this new dynamic. Not all men, but some men. And this can lead to overall restraint or hesitancy when it comes to engaging in any type of relationship. Because these...
Well, stop there for a second. It's not... this is where we part... well, I wouldn't say part ways, but this is where we tend to disagree. I think in terms of, feminism and women becoming more independent and more assertive in society, I think it's forced men to indeed step up their game, because women aren't. They're expecting more of men. They're definitely expecting more of men in terms of the rule of six is a perfect example of feminism in action. They expect more men to be more masculine or taller, slash physically stronger. Ask men to earn more money. Ask men to be of sorry. Be sexually virile, or at least have some sort of sexual virility, or have some sort of sexual experience, and also have men 6 feet 6 figures, and 6 feet 6 figures. I'm just counting it: 6 feet 6 inches or more, 6 figures, and six. I'm just trying to get that. 6 feet 6 inches or more, uh, 6 feet, 6 inches or more. But anyways, I'll develop that in a minute. But again, it's demanding more of men in society. So therefore, it asks for men to definitely be more confident, more assertive, and definitely raise your game in terms of being the apple of a woman's eye. And women do not wish to ask for average men anymore. That means there's a whole segment of society, segment of the male population who are going to be disqualified because of the fact that they can't measure up. And so there's a whole, that's what leads to a whole segment of men being, well, ineligible for the sexual marketplace and for dating, relationships, and marriage. Let's continue.
Traditional markers of masculinity, as far as financial provision and making decisions, are being redefined and challenged regularly. This can lead to a lot of confusion and overall insecurity when it comes to men, especially their courage and confidence in pursuing relationships. Now, we also have to talk about the increased expectation that we've put on men when it comes to the emotional labor. Most people in the modern world want men to express and communicate their emotions or be much more attuned to them the way that women tend to manifest these things. And while there is importance around men's expression or ability to validate so that they don't compartmentalize their emotions, many of them have not been socialized to engage in this type of work. And to be completely transparent here, I don't think it's even required for all men to function that way. But the pressure to meet these new relational standards can be really intimidating and somewhat uncomfortable for a lot of men. And this will lead them to withdraw from relationships rather than to risk failing or some sort of rejection. Now, we also have to touch on the point of the concept of women being or becoming more masculine. The rise in more assertive and independent women can sometimes create tension in a relationship. And this phenomenon has several impacts on a man's sense of masculinity and his approach to romantic relationships. As women continue to embrace more and more masculine traits, such as assertiveness, ambition, and financial independence, men may feel like their own levels of masculinity are being challenged or completely diminished.
Well, this is the problem that women find themselves in over and over again. Is that's it? 6-pack, 6 feet 6 inches, and 6 figures. That's indeed. There you go. 6-pack. There we go. Bang, 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 bang. Thank you, Lana BK, for that correction. Now, this is the problem that a lot of women find when it comes to relationships. Is that in taking on male traits, they feel that this is what men want, and the problem is in asserting male traits such as asserting such things as, let me just continue this quickly.
And independent women can sometimes create tension in a relationship. And this phenomenon has several impacts on a man's sense of masculinity and his approach to romantic relationships. As women continue to embrace more and more masculine traits, such as assertiveness, ambition, and financial.
So there we go. Assertiveness, ambition, and financial independence. With this assertion of assertiveness, ambition, and financial independence, women are becoming more like men. And with that comes the problem. Do men want to have women who are more like themselves? And as we've seen overwhelmingly in society, they don't. They much rather have women be more feminine than masculine, having assertiveness, having ambition, having a financial independence, being disagreeable, having more of a male frame, having more demands in life. All these things are male traits. And the question is, for men, do they want to come home to themselves? And more often than not, they don't. So therefore, women somehow ostracize themselves from the dating market because of their male traits. And the more male traits they have, the less effective their dating strategy is, and the less effective they are in the dating market in and of itself. So it's women have to now start through feminism have to now perform a balancing act, because as we see in the incoming data, women are starting to be more single. in time, and it will be a case where 63% of men are single these days. It'll come to a point where women are 50% single themselves because they're losing those female traits that made them more valuable to men. So therefore, men don't see them as being, ideal for dating relationships, if you know what I mean. Let's continue.
Financial independence. Men may feel like their own levels of masculinity are being challenged or completely diminished, as the qualities that once defined manhood are now shared across genders, leading some men to completely question, what is my role in this relationship? And these feelings can lead to questions or feelings of insecurity or resentment, building things like contempt, particularly for men who derive their sense of self-worth and their sense of identity from traditionally masculine roles. And when men perceive that women are outperforming them, especially in areas that are typically traditionally masculine, it can completely cause them to revolt and create more tension between men and women.
Now again, remember that these roles that are made, that are now made for women, because again, they're of the assertion of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. With these new roles that women have in male spaces, yes, indeed, there's cause for resentment, and a lot of these roles that are created for women are created simply because companies want to see them as being woke, want to see them as being more inclusionary of women, especially in male spaces. That's why you see a lot of diverse job fairs where women are encouraged to enter into male spaces, especially in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math professions. So, but with that, newfound role made for women, a lot of them take on male traits, and with those male traits come the fact that come the drawback of women not being taken seriously by men because they take on a more male role. So we're going to talk about relationship impact. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. A very interesting topic here, and we're going to go through it. We're here on IG and YouTube again, and sponsored by Duntalk, DUNTLK.com. Let's continue.
Blurring of these lines continues to create power dynamic struggles in relationships. If both partners are both assertive and independent, it can be much more difficult to establish clear roles within that relationship, and this can lead to conflicts over control or any decision that's ever made. And men who feel like their masculinity is being suppressed may react by completely withdrawing emotionally, avoiding commitment, or becoming resentful. And this can lead to them undermining the foundation of the relationship, increasing levels of infidelity, and maybe we could even correlate this with divorce. But hey, I'm just speculating. Now, that tends to be more associated with the boss bitch movement, where women are ambitious, independent, and don't need no man. Again, kind of emasculating the traditional male role. However, I think another movement that's relevant to this conversation is the Me Too movement. And this brought necessary attention to sexual harassment and overall abuse, emphasizing the importance of consensual and respectful intimate interactions. However, in contrast, it's also amplified feelings of anxiety for men in particular. It feels like they're always on edge with needing to process and make sure they articulate consent, while also needing to feed into their natural male assertiveness or aggression when it comes to being the partner that pursues. And this isn't just something that men talk about. This is also something that women talk about. But it's hard for them to walk up to somebody without feeling like they might be coming off as a creep or crossing a boundary. And this has led men to become significantly more cautious when it comes to pursuing any type of curiosity around pursuing a potential person that they find attractive, because they fear if they make any perceived misstep, it could be seen as inappropriate behavior. And
that is a real problem in terms of modern day relationships, is that men making the first move, which is usually the way, and that's what most women want. I would say the majority of women want men making the first move. Men are playing, hot potato in terms of they don't know where they stand, they don't know how to approach, they don't know how to, appear masculine yet not appear creepy, and that is a sincere problem with modern dating relationships. A lot of men don't want to go through that hopscotch. A lot of men don't want to go through that stage of awkwardness. But again, it is I mean, as Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And for a tale as old as time, men have had to, for the most part, make the first move. And it's it's a learned ability. It's a learned sound. That's why there are pickup artists out there. That's why there are people who teach men how to approach women these days, because so many men are so afraid of picking on women simply because not only are their male roles challenged, but also through the Me Too movement, they don't know where they stand in terms of relationships. But it's like any ability. You have to. It's a trial and effort sort of ability, and one has to try again and again and again in order to get it right. And some days you do, some days you don't, but that's part of the game, because as was stated, 1 out of 10 true pickup artists are that successful. So in terms of picking up women, so it means that a pickup artist picks up women, 1 out of 10 women that they pursue or they encounter. So it is it's a trial by error thing, and it's a numbers game, and men have to understand this. But indeed, it is difficult to know when to appear masculine and when not to appear so creepy. So it is a balancing act that men, especially in the modern day, have to navigate, and it's proving a problem for a lot of men, which is showing that I think C3 of young men are single. Let's continue.
Anxiety can lead to complete withdrawal from any type of pursuit of a romantic partner, and men find themselves having this inner conflict of balancing their levels of assertiveness with respect for boundaries. So the combined effects of these movements and shift in gender dynamics overall are driving significant changes in how romantic relationships are formed and sustained. Which brings me to my next point. We have to talk about the red pill space. Picture a young man scrolling through social media and coming across the content of these extreme communities. He's bombarded with messages about the dangers of engaging in any type of a relationship with a woman, leading him to adopt a more defensive stance towards relationships. The red pill space and MGTOW movements have grown in response to these perceived injustices towards men and in the modern dating world itself. And these communities tend to argue that modern relationships are fraught with risks for men, leading many of them to opt out entirely. Now, it's important to note that these things do exist for a reason, and they tend to stem from a very genuine place. It's valid that many men are entirely frustrated with the modern dating world, and I can empathize with that. However, they also tend to perpetuate these negative stereotypes and discourage men completely from seeking meaningful relationships.
Now, this is where I take issue with Kate and Michelle in this instance, in that the red pill, though it can appear toxic to women, is empowering to men in a certain circumstance, because it gives men confidence and actual instruction on the dating marketplace. It actually instills confidence in men to go out into the dating marketplace. Without the red pill, you would find more men staying away from the dating marketplace because they didn't know how to navigate, especially those who are indeed who had never had a father figure, who never had a man in their life. So these are online fathers, if you think about it. They are truly online fathers. And yes, indeed, there can be negative aspects of the red pill. However, for the most part, red pill is a good thing. It is an idea that gives men confidence to go out into the world and encounter women, and actually give them I wouldn't say a step by step, but at least some sort of tutelage on how to deal with women in the modern age, and what situations to approach women, be with women, and also abstain from women in and of itself. Because red pill also tells you that there must be a certain distance kept away from women, because in certain aspects, women tend to soften a man's ambition, soften a man's goals, and softens a man's masculinity. So the rule of 6 in terms of 6 pack, 6 feet, 6 inches, or six figures tends to be you know softened when a woman comes around. So it teaches you to keep your sharpness as a man. That's what the red pill understands you be, and that's exactly what women want. Men want I wouldn't say toxic individuals, but they want assertive and confident individuals, and that's what the red pill begins with. Now, again, from a female perspective, women see things in a negative light because they haven't been in these spaces on a full time or at a ad length discussion or conversational basis. However, I can assure you that a man, any man who can really navigate the space, know which parts of it to take in and which parts of it to do away with in terms of having relationships with women. Because, well, there's no greater teacher than by putting such practices into society. Let's continue.
Leading to a cycle of isolation and resentment. The red pill and MGTOW, and if you don't know what MGTOW is, it's men going on their own way, have gained significant traction, specifically in recent years, particularly online. And they provide a space for men to discuss openly their experiences, frustrations, and perspective on modern gender dynamics. And these communities are often seen as a solution in contrast to the complicated landscape that we're facing right now within the modern dating world. They talk about things like relationship dynamics, feminism, and societal expectations of masculinity in the modern world. Now, this may seem like a dark space, but there are some positives here that I feel are important to discuss. Again, these spaces, well, they're here for a reason. They serve some form of function that we should pay attention to. Men have found a space or a community where they feel seen, heard, and understood, especially if the culture and society around them is telling them that their thoughts, desires, or perspective is toxic, especially if they've gone through experiences like rejection or divorce. So they are able to find a space where they can validate and verbalize their own experiences while also gaining perspective and feeling related by, where they can share their stories and find some semblance of solace with other men who've also gone through similar experiences. And this overall may help them find a sense of control in their lives once again, encouraging them to focus on self-improvement, financial independence, and personal growth.
Yes, indeed. Great points made there by Kate and Michelle. I'll let that repeat again.
Find a sense of control in their lives once again, encouraging them to focus on self-improvement, financial independence, and personal.
Yes, self-improvement, financial independence, and personal growth. Yes, that is one thing that the red pill does indeed instruct. So therefore, the red pill really, it teaches a man to be a man. It's an online male course, if you think about it. It's an online male movement. It's basically teaching the things that women want from men, which is self-improvement, financial independence, personal growth. So therefore, it teaches you, well, basically to more muscle, more money, learn, game, hold, frame. So therefore, it teaches you how to be a man and how to navigate the dating space and the sexual marketplace. And it's seen as toxic by women because it's basically men leveling up and men understanding female nature and understanding its machinations and how indeed to combat such machinations, because as society has moved completely to the left in certain aspects, and we have to give Donald Trump thanks, because let's say Kamala Harris, this is as a side issue, let's say Kamala Harris became the president of the United States, her initial idea was to shut down a lot of these red pill spaces, and it was especially when and treating, remember, this is under the Biden administration, treating red pill spaces and MGTOW spaces as terrorist organizations, as a terrorist idea, as a domestic terrorist idea. Read up on the Diverting Hate manifest that was issued by the Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security in the United States. They were moving in on the red pill. They were going to try to dismantle the red pill space. Just going to come back to you in a bit. It seems that we've hit on a nerve with YouTube. So we're going to come back in the second hour speaking on this subject. And I thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. We're going to go back in hour 2 in a bit. And we're going to speak more on why 63% of men are single. So come on back. We're going to be continuing on YouTube, but I will bring you here back on IG in just a bit. Be back in a second. And we are live. We are live and back on Talk Live in the second hour of the why 63% of young men are single from a female perspective. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. Live on IG and YouTube. Sponsored by DunTalk, DUNTALK.com. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Please comment down below on IG and on YouTube on this subject because I wanted to get a female's perspective on this. And please subscribe to Kate and Michelle. She's done a wonderful, in-depth study on why 63% of men are single from many different perspectives, including the feminist perspective, the testosterone perspective, also now into the red pills perspective as well. So do subscribe to Kate and Michelle. She's doing wonderful things in the YouTube streets. And thank you very much for the study. Fair use. And let's get back into it. So let's go. We were just to catch you up. We were just discussing how indeed the red pill is affecting why 63% of young men are single. But we're delving into the positive aspects. Again, I have something to say about this subject, but I'll let Kate and Michelle continue. Let's go.
Growth. This is one of the things that I actually agree with when it comes to these communities existing. They do really emphasize a man being masculine, being ambitious, pursuing something, and becoming somebody. But this focus on becoming the best version of oneself can be somewhat productive, and it can lead to overall increases in their self-esteem, self-confidence, overall health, and again, financial resources down the road. And by
being a father for a lot of these young men. Online fathers. That's what MGTOW and the Red Pill teaches a lot of these men these days, that women fail to understand in certain aspects. Let's continue.
Prioritizing their own well-being and their overall goals, men in these communities may feel more empowered and less dependent on sexual activity, particularly from romantic relationships. And now that we've talked about the positives, well, I do have to talk about the downsides here. One of the biggest criticisms when it comes to looking at these communities is that they often foster a deep cynicism and distrust towards women. And the narratives within these spaces particularly portray women as manipulative, hypergamous, and untrustworthy, which can lead to negative and adversarial views of romantic relationships in general. And this mindset can discourage men from pursuing relationships in the first place, as they may become overly guarded, suspicious, or avoidant of intimate connections altogether. And while these communities do discuss self-improvement, they often do it in such a way that enforces toxic masculinity, emphasizing dominance, emotional suppression or manipulation of their partner's emotions, and the objectification of women. And this can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and behaviors that are counterproductive to building any type of healthy connection. And this fixation on hypermasculinity can also cause men to reject any traits that are perceived as feminine, such as empathy or vulnerability, which are essential for forming any type of deep and meaningful romantic connection.
Okay, so again, it is said that the red pill makes men more toxic, makes men a little less makes men a little less vulnerable and have little empathy for women. But let's consider this, in that, do women want to see men as being less? Women want to see men being less emphatic, and also with less vulnerable. To be fair, I mean, more emphatic and more vulnerable. To be fair, however, there is a limit. Women, what I see within the space, women do not want their men to be crying and be and lacking that sort of take charge, assertive, dominance traits that make a man a man. And if you ask for a man to be more have more empathy and be more vulnerable, then you're allowing you're building a stick in which to whip a man. So therefore, a lot of women leave men because they see the men as being weak, as being vulnerable, as being less assertive, less dominant. And you take those plausible male traits away, and if a woman, God forbid, and has more of these traits than a man, a woman would tend to detach or tend to move away from men because uh, they don't, you know, have those certain male traits that would attract women in the first place. And so it is it's a high wire balancing act to have a certain amount of envy, a certain amount of vulnerability without going too far. And that's one thing that women do not understand is that they're building women through these charges are asking men to be monsters in terms of empathy and vulnerability, in which women are afraid of and will eventually leave. So it's sort of a crossroads. It's sort of a you know a weak point and problem that women tend not to understand. So it's better to be too much than too better to be too little, just a little bit too little than too much, because women will tend to take away the essence of manhood, and with that, men tend to be less attractive to women. And so a balancing act has to be created, but much more so of less empathy and less vulnerability, so that the right amount of I would say the right amount of empathy and vulnerability, so that a man can be a man and still be attractive to his woman. Because having too much empathy and too much vulnerability would you tend to go down that simp route, and would make you less attractive to women on the whole. Let's continue.
Or vulnerability, which are essential for forming any type of deep and meaningful romantic connection. Now, the MGTOW philosophy in particular here encourages men to completely avoid touching a woman with a 9-foot pole, and this lifestyle advocates for complete isolation and independence from women. And while this might create short-term relief with the frustrations of dating, which are totally valid, it can also lead to long-term complications of isolation, loneliness, and further exacerbate men's mental health issues. And this is, again, not just my opinion. Studies show that strong connections are crucial for mental and emotional well-being, but by withdrawing from any type of partnership, men will may miss out, I should say, on the emotional and psychological benefits of close and intimate connections. And for anybody that wants to come in and say, well, they have relationships, these relationships are on the internet. And if you've ever met somebody who is mentally stable with only having connections that are on a screen, not one person can do that. Personal relationships in person, in reality, are critical for human beings.
So yes, in terms of the MGTOW movement, it's a temporary solution rather than a permanent solution. I think it's a problem that men going their own way is an issue that indeed enforces a lot of the problems in terms of low testosterone, and men tend to men allows for more low testosterone, less physical activity, less ambition, and it's a temporary fix, but it's not a long term solution. And it's a movement that has its place, but only on only as a stopgap and not as a permanent fix. And with the MGTOW movement, there are valid points to the MGTOW movement because they see what's happening going on in the course, they see what's going on in society, And I think now that especially in the states, it's becoming and Trump being elected, the MGTOW is going to be less and less circumstantial, because I think of society moving towards the west. I mean, moving more towards the right. Sorry about that. It is a it's a it's a solution that will find less favor as we move forward in life, but is still, it's still acceptable, but again, to a lesser extent. Let's continue.
With the narratives that are in these ecosystems. The rhetoric of the red pill and MGTOW spaces often emphasize the risks of modern dating. They talk about divorce, financial loss, and the emotional pain. Again, all of which are valid. But this leads men to develop toxic and avoidant attitudes towards relationships, which I have to guess the majority of men actually want, as they become more and more focused on self-preservation and resentment towards women than they do on building genuine connections and cultivating some semblance of intimacy. And this isn't just my opinion. The data supports this stuff. Men who engage heavily in these types of communities are more likely to report dissatisfaction with their dating lives and the lowest desire to pursue any type of relationship. And honestly, I can't blame them with the narratives and communication that go on within these communities. There's lack of trust, there's lack of desire, and you paint women as the evil demon that you must avoid and who is responsible for all of your problems. Now, this is where it gets really important that I don't paint a picture with a broad brush. There are incredibly toxic women, just as there are incredibly toxic men. But if we try to put everybody under one umbrella, everybody's going to end up alone, depressed, and probably unhealthy. And men in particular, because they are the ones in these communities who tend to internalize these messages and narratives and take them on as complete truth for every woman they ever meet in their entire fucking lives, will struggle to open up to any potential partner because they fear betrayal or manipulation. And inevitably, this will create a self-fulfilling prophecy where men expect negative outcomes in relationships, leading to behaviors that undermine the relationship itself. And this will inevitably reinforce that there's something wrong with women, when really it's the subconscious triggers that manifest behaviors of mistrust, betrayal, insecurity, abandonment that lead men to avoid any type of depth, which will inevitably ruin a relationship.
So stop there for a second. And she said a lot there, but again, she's very good at detailing the fact that indeed, I think the answer is indeed having a red pill mindset, having a more chivalrous mindset, but understanding with chivalry there is a cost to be paid, and women need to pay that in order for them to earn your heart and your devotion and your financial ability. However, once you engage in the MGTOW movement, once you engage in the men go their own way movement, it's fraught with problems. It's fraught with negative aspects, in the sense of women. You tend to take less pride in yourself. You tend to have negative feelings about yourself. You tend to have negative issues with women and mistrust of women. And it's a negative cycle that will only allow for you to end up alone and and mistrusting the fair sex, in that your testosterone levels will, eventually lower, because you don't have that you don't have that physical, that dating, that interaction with women that men to a certain extent need over time. So I think the red pill allows for you to engage with women, understand their machinations, be mindful of them, but still go into things with with greater knowledge and greater greater tools in order to deal with relationships in a more even keeled way, and have a certain amount of understanding that women, though can be toxic, those toxic behaviors can be combated and can be dealt with in a more constructive manner, rather than being MGTOW and just driving your way and going away unto yourself and your community, and not dealing with the problem head on. So therefore, being avoidant and all the negative aspects thereafter. So thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We're just gonna finish up these last two topics, and then we're gonna have a part two tomorrow. I think we're gonna have a part two tomorrow because this is uh, a rather big topic, and it needs to be handled in a sort of succinct manner. So tonight will be a part one, but let's finish off with part one right now as we continue.
Brings me to my next point. Social media. Social media has become an integral part of daily life, and it profoundly affects how men see themselves, especially in comparison to their male counterparts. While opportunities can be provided by social media for connection and self-expression, it also introduces new challenges and pressures that can influence a man's desire and ability to form committed relationships. Social media platforms provide men with the ability to connect with a wider range of people than ever before, and these platforms make it a lot easier to meet potential partners, especially for men who might be more shy or have limited social circles. Dating apps and social media allow men to reach out to others based on shared interests and values, increasing their chances of finding a potentially compatible partner. Additionally, social media can also foster and strengthen current relationships by opening the window for communication, and this enables certain couples to stay connected even when they're miles apart. Another note on social media, relative to even this topic of conversation in YouTube, is that there's a vast amount of information on relationships and anything else, including advice from experts or experiences shared by peers. And this can empower anybody, including men, with knowledge and strategies for building healthy and sustainable relationships. Now, one potential upside and also potential flaw is that it allows people to express themselves and present a curated version of their identity. This can be empowering to a certain extent, the idea that you can be whoever it is that you want to be, and it also gives people the ability to exercise control over their own perception. If it's authentic and through that vehicle you're expressing your personal values or interests, you can attract people with like-minded ideals that resonate with this persona. The negative to that, though, is that there's plenty of people that also curate a version of them that isn't what you would meet in real life. And this is where the tendency for narcissistic individuals to manipulate and control other people for their own personal gain gets really dark. Another negative regarding social media and its presence, especially how it
just getting back to that, it's it is true. I mean, social media is a great way to meet a lot more people. But again, as already as maybe not mentioned, but I'll mention the fact that a lot of these interactions, if available, I mean, most relationships are local. But now that the world is much more global, and and people have more disposable income to fly in their paramours or go to their paramours wherever they may be. The problem is that it may be a tad different from reality, and that you may be professing a side of yourself that may not be true on a full-time basis. And it's hard for people to find out about the real you through social media. So, though, social media, especially Instagram being the biggest dating platform in the world, to be fair, people want to show the good life. People want to show that they're funny, they're interesting, they're talented, they're outgoing, they're ambitious, they're financially independent, and all these other things. The fact of the matter is, does it show the real them? Now, and I say for a minimum of individuals. So, to be fair, it's reality on steroids, if you think about it. It only shows the good aspects of people and not the bad. And so you shouldn't buy into social media to any great extent, because reality will bite sooner rather than later. Let's continue.
impacts relationships and men is that it often presents an idealized version of life. Users post carefully selected moments that highlight their success or perceived achievements. We can get angles in Photoshop to highlight attractiveness and ultimately give you a snapshot into a moment of happiness. And this can create unrealistic expectations for what it means to be a man who's successful and also impact what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship. And this constant comparison can lead to dissatisfaction and amplified levels of insecurity when it comes to you assessing your own life. And this can deter men specifically from even pursuing any type of relationship, as they believe that they can't measure up to the perceived standards that are being presented online. And if you've spent more than 5 minutes on social media, you'll see highlight reels of girls on yachts and men who are wealthy, and everybody has this idea that, well, all of these women only want men who have all these fun toys. When in reality, if you go out and actually talk to a woman, most of us don't really give a shit about that. Regardless, the pressure to maintain a certain level of image on social media can lead to increased levels of anxiety and the ultimate fear of rejection, particularly when it comes to shooting your shot with a woman or dating anybody. And this will ultimately continue to put pressure on men to present themselves in a certain light, in a way that they believe will be attractive to other people or women. The problem with that, though, is that it forces men to put on a mask. If that's not who they really are or the lifestyle that they actually live, well, it's easier to create a distance and play the long distance game until you can get somebody to fall in love with you, so that maybe that's enough. And this ultimately driving up the anxiety, making it significantly harder for them to actually cultivate something real in reality. And it'll start to drive this perception of who they need to be while preventing them from actually taking the step and being vulnerable, owning who they are. Because at the end of the day, just as a personal side note, women care a lot more about your kindness than they do about your success.
Good point raised there by Kate and Michelle, in that indeed the most important trait, and we showed this on Talk Live on the previous show, the most important trait that women see in men is kindness. Yes, physical attractiveness, ambition, social awareness, and social and yeah, having a big social ability and construct in society. All these things count, but the biggest thing that women look for in men is having that kindness. In terms of their personality traits, and if you are seen as a kind man, it overcomes for a lot. Now, again, physical and mental and ambition and all these things come together as well. Believe me, looks are indeed a big thing to women, and it goes without saying. But a measure of kindness will get you somewhere. But again, all this has to be used in combination. But kindness is a certain aspect that women look for in all men. I mean, if you are, a good-looking man but yet a dick, women will not tend to be attracted to you, no matter how you look, no matter how ambitious you are, no matter how much money you make. Kindness covers over a lot of things. But again, this has to be taken into perspective, because kindness with a dash of good looks, with a dash of ambition, with a dash of being funny enough, tall enough, having the right hairstyle, wearing the right clothes, doing all these things make you into a man that women want. So it's just one aspect of things, but it is a big aspect, to be fair. Let's continue.
No, this doesn't mean that women don't care about you having ambition or being driven or being successful in some light. But if you are a successful asshole, I'll choose a kind man who's middle class all day. Now, another negative.
Now again, she did not mention. That's one thing she didn't mention. She didn't mention looks. That's another thing she did not mention is looks. She'll take a kind middle class man, yes, but he's got to have the looks of a Brad Pitt. If you got a kind middle-class Brad Pitt, the girl's going for it all day. So again, looks do matter, gentlemen. Let that be known. That's one thing she did not bring to your attention. You have to be physically attractive to a woman. So therefore, it is great that you get yourself into the gym, make yourself look physically attractive, look like you can protect and provide, and women will eventually tend to want to be around you. But physically, you must have a certain look that women want so that people want to be around. So let that be said. Kindness, yes, is great. Being a middle-class kind man, absolutely fantastic. But remember, looks matter too. Let's continue.
In my personal opinion, but maybe positive for you, is that social media, particularly dating apps, foster a culture of superficial interactions and create this casual hookup culture. The emphasis on quick surface level judgments based on photos and brief profiles can lead to the devaluation of even building a deeper connection. And this will ultimately discourage both parties from pursuing any type of depth when it comes to a relationship. The other problem with this is that optionality doesn't really lead to optimality, meaning that the abundance of options that we always have allows people to keep the door open for the grass being greener on the other side. And this can lead men to searching for multiple different options instead of actually making a commitment to one person. And the same for women. The greater impact on this, though, especially in the aftermath of COVID, is that most people don't really have good face-to-face communication skills. And these are crucial for not only building, but maintaining a healthy relationship. Men.
Very, very good point raised there by Kate and Michelle. Face-to-face relations is the number one quality trait, sort of criterion you need in order for you to make it in the dating market. Face-to-face interaction. Nothing beats face-to-face interaction. That's why I don't bother with. I never really bother with dating apps in and of itself, because life happens outside. It never happened inside, as the great Kevin Samuels once said. Life happens out there, and dating apps can only bring you so far. But if you cannot interact with people on a more social level, face to face, you're in trouble. You're definitely in trouble. Social media only takes you so far. Social media only brings you to the door, but how you interact in terms of that person in real life, that's what sets you apart. It really does, and that's one thing. That's a failing point of a lot of young men these days, is that they don't have those social skills necessary to attract, interact, and get involved in dating relationships in the sexual marketplace, and that is a deficiency that will end up costing them. That's why 63 young men are single, because they don't have the social skills necessary for you to partake big time in the dating world, and for you to just approach women out of the blue. That's the one thing that a lot of men who have these skills have them winning all the time in the dating market, and that is it's a lost art. It's becoming a lost art because a lot of men are becoming more inclusive, more introspective, lacking testosterone, all these different things we discussed tonight, and it affects you in how you interact with women in the dating market. And at the end of the day, it makes you a lucky man or an unlucky man. But all to dress your best, to have the physical ability, to have a sense of charm, have a sense of humor, to dress right, to have a good sense of smell, have a good sense of style, all these things interact to making you a better man and a better candidate in the dating market. But the number one thing is indeed having the social skills necessary to interact with women. Once you do have that, guys, the world is your oyster. But it is a lost art, and it needs to be rekindled within men, or else a lot of that number of 63% of young men will only increase. Let's continue.
Who primarily interact online may struggle a ton when it comes to actually communicating or meeting somebody in person. And this can lead to awkwardness and misunderstandings, which will create significantly more difficulty in forming any type of relationship. And over time, this can erode their levels of confidence in overall social situations, making it much more challenging to initiate and sustain any meaningful relationship. So while there are positives and negatives when it comes to social media for everybody, such as opportunities for connection or increased ability to get information, there are also pretty severe negatives. And as somebody who works in mental health, I think it's really important to consider some of the impacts and the trade-offs that we make with having such a wide ability to connect with people, not just in our communities, not just in our neighborhoods, not just in our states, around the world. And this can continue to negatively impact somebody's self-esteem if they don't have confidence in who they are and actually understand where they want to go or where they find meaning in their life. Because you'll always be chasing this dangling carrot that tells you that you're not enough, but maybe you will be someday if you start to do all of these perceived things that make you high value. Which brings me to my next point, which might be a little uncomfortable to talk about. But between 76 and 87% of 18 to 29-year-old men consume pornography regularly. And of these men who use pornography regularly, they report less satisfaction in real life sex. Even more alarming than this, though, is the rise in erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, and diminished libido in men under 40 years old. And this is all associated with frequent pornography use. And this has become more and more prevalent with the expansion of the digital world, particularly among young men. The pervasive and often addictive nature has profound consequences on men's ability to even engage in romantic relationships. One of the biggest factors in this is the fact that they become highly desensitized to real life sex. And this may require them to have to use extreme content in order to achieve even the same level of arousal. And this will continue to decrease their satisfaction when it comes to engaging with a woman in reality, because normal sex doesn't stimulate this same level of arousal. This also...
Stopping there, it is, this is one that is really a serious take, and it's something that even the red pill agree with. To being an overconsumer of pornography is a problem for men, especially when it comes to dating a relationship and normal sexual encounters. Those who are addicted to porn, indeed, it is a drug, and it is a false drug in the sense of it doesn't allow for men to interact, to have a good sexual relationship with women. It is, and it is sort of problematic in terms of getting up your sexual libido and ejaculation and having sexual encounters. Yes, indeed, once in a while is okay, but to be doing it, to be, a fiend of pornography, and to have that injected into your veins. Thank you very much for that, Lana BK. Absolutely agree. To have that injected into your veins, and to be a purveyor of pornography for lengthy periods, maybe 2 to 3 or 4 times a day, is problematic. It's hugely problematic, and it doesn't solve anything. And it gives you a false sense of what sex is and what relationships are and what healthy sexual activity is, and it is not something to be partaken of on a frequent basis. Sometimes it helps raise your testosterone, but it's a false heightening. It's a false surge in your testosterone, because after a while you become desensitized to it, and it tends to take a toll on normal relationships with women for the most part, if you are CIS gendered, of course. But it is not something that is to be partaken of on a frequent basis. And the thing about it is, this is a men's problem. This is not really a female problem. Females tend not to look at porn. They tend not to be very interested in porn. In fact, if left to women, the pornography industry would be out of date, out of existence within a week, within a month at the most. This is a totally male problem. This is mostly a male issue that has to be rectified within one's life. And what really exacerbates this problem is the fact that of men regressing and men going their own way, and men being less active within social settings and interacting with women on a regular basis. All of these things can lead men to being 63% single, and that is the over perversion, the over consumption of porn itself. And we as men, we can see pornography in a certain aspect, but we have to. It has to be. We have to be used. It has to be used cautiously, to be fair, because an overconsumption of porn, an over addiction to porn, can definitely lead to terrible relationships, negative relationships with women, but also with oneself. In that, your sexual performance can suffer greatly by the overconsumption of it. Let's continue.
Also creates exaggerated sexual experiences, which will create unrealistic expectations of what it's like to have sex with somebody as a human being in reality versus fantasy. And this will lead to a distorted view of sex and intimacy overall. And this will also put pressure not just on men but on women for how they're supposed to be and what their performance needs to be like, instead of looking at the connection or the bond that you're creating that is meaningful, in my opinion, and spiritual when you're actually engaging in this act with somebody. And this can ultimately lead to frustration, a disconnect, and overall dissatisfaction in the intimacy or relationship that you're trying to build. And these aren't just my opinions.
So yeah, remember what sex is for. Sex was used for procreation first. Sex was used for that bond, for that intimacy, for that oxytocin exchange between men and women, between women to men. And, an exaggerated look and use of sex can, really sour your relationships within it and sour relationships with your partner. And it has to be used with caution, to be fair. And it's and again, but the problem is many men suffer from this dysfunction, and it's showing up in terms of relationships. Instead of going out and getting into real live relationships, they'd rather deal with dolls, or they'd rather deal with with porn in order to fulfill this interaction with women. And that, in and of itself, withdraws you from society and gives you a negative aspect and a negative look at women themselves, and gives you an unhealthy perspective on women. And it's something that has to be regulated, gentlemen. That's something I will say to you, gentlemen. It has to be regulated. You cannot be too addicted to things, to pornography, because again, it only leads to negative abilities and negative relationships with the fair sex. Let's continue.
This is based in research. Exposure to pornography use regularly is associated with greater acceptance of casual sex, which will undermine the stability and emotional depth of romantic relationships. And this drives people to shift away from emotional intimacy to personal gratification. And men who consume pornography regularly find it difficult to engage emotionally with their partner, as their primary sexual experiences are primary solitary and focus on visual stimuli rather than the physical and emotional connection. And this next point's important. The use of pornography can lead to secrecy and shame in a relationship, creating this barrier when it comes to open communication and trust. Partners may feel betrayed or inadequate when they discover their significant other's pornography use, which will lead to conflict, insecurity, and likely a breakdown in the relationship. But while I can sit here and talk about the negatives, just like the red pill space or other extreme communities, we have to ask why men are relying on this so heavily. And for some men, it provides a sense of stress relief, a way to express their sexuality when a partner is either unavailable or uninterested. And it can be a way for them to satisfy their sexual urges without the complications or stress of a real-life partner. And this can help men ultimately reduce feelings of loneliness.
Yes, all these things are indeed true. It's the stress relief, the satisfy sexual needs, and reduce loneliness. But this can only be used in moderation. It is so key for men to understand this. Only in moderation can pornography be used. Only in moderation. If you overindulge in pornography, gentlemen, your relationships will suffer. It will. It eventually will. And let's say this. those involved in the porn industry can tell you they have to over medicate in order to perform these deviant acts. To be fair, on a regular basis, because it's not healthy. It's not, and it in well, for those women who are involved in the porn industry, they also involve themselves in unhealthy relationships in and of itself. So, it is it is it is not the best place to be, and men tend to see those involved in the porn tend to look down on women who are involved in the porn industry in and of itself. So even though they're satisfying a need, they tend to denigrate uh, and have a dim view of women in the porn industry, and never consider them proper wives and girlfriends because they're because their minds are always their chances of those women and their chance of being in healthy sexual relationships, dating, and marriages goes down considerably, simply because one had the bigger D, one had the longer had better cunnilingus, other men had this other aspect, this, that, and the other, and they keep on comparing people, men to men, and women cannot, and their oxytocin levels drop considerably, and therefore they are not ready for marriage in and of itself. So there are negative aspects for those involved in the porn industry, those being women and men in and of itself, because they can form healthy relationships with women. Let's continue. Let's finish up here.
Loneliness. If a man's needs are not being met by his partner or just in general in life, as he feels may be inadequate due to the unrealistic standards or pressures, yet still has these temptations, well, pornography is an easy accessible outlet for them to get their needs met, and it also alleviates the fear of rejection or inadequacy that they would encounter with a woman, especially with some of the extremist narratives around how women are the worst. But what's important to note around pornography use, especially in young men, it will create difficulties for them later on in life when it comes to trying to form any ounce of intimacy in a relationship. Their understanding of sex is shaped in ways that aren't easily integratable. This early exposure of unrealistic standards in sexual scenarios can shape their understanding of sex in ways that are not conducive to forming any type of deep emotional bond. And over time, this can actually lead men to prefer solitary sexual experiences over the actual physical connection with another human being. Now, lastly, I always have to touch on some semblance of mental health. Excessive pornography use can lead to addiction, where men feel compelled to consume it, even if it is negatively impacting their overall life. And this addiction can interfere with daily functioning, work, and relationships, leading to a wide range of mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. And the compulsive need for pornography use can make it really difficult for men to find satisfaction in real life, further isolating them and then exacerbating mental health issues. So those were the 6 key factors.
So those are the 6 key factors here, people, and we gotta thank Kate and Michelle for bringing this to my attention. Now, there are a few things that I pushed back on, including the red pill space. Definitely her take from the MGTOW is definitely to be subscribed to. However, when it comes to testosterone, when it comes to the greater worldview, when it comes to feminism, when it comes to red pill, when it comes to social media, and when it comes to porn in and of itself, yes, all these factors do in some way or shape or form contribute for the most part to why 63% of young men are single. So, in my estimation, in terms of this first aspect of things, am I in agreement with what Kate and Michelle has to say? Yes, I would say yes. I say the woman's perspective here comes from a learned background, and again, it is to be considered seriously, and credit Kate and Michelle for doing that. So let me go to the big screen. Thank you very much for Kate and Michelle. Do subscribe to Kate and Michelle doing wonderful things in the YouTube streets. Again, psychology, I believe, master's candidate, and and a woman who has really done an in-depth, a deep dive on this subject, and done a terrific job, to be fair. So let me go back to the full cam here tonight. So tomorrow night, we are going to finish on part 2 of why men are indeed single. And that will happen at 9 p.m. tomorrow night. Believe me, I will stick to the 9 p.m. edict as who is it? Golden Titus said that I was a bit late. So again, I will stick to the edict here tomorrow night at 9 p.m. But I thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live. We're going to end it right here with why 63% of men are single. Again, if you look back on certain aspects of things in terms of testosterone, lack of testosterone, uh, men placed in society, feminism, red pill, social media, and pornography. All these things do contribute to men being single in and of itself, and it is something to be heeded and indeed taken into account. And do subscribe to Kane and Michelle for that. It's a wonderful deep dive into the subject. And we'll be back tomorrow night on Talk Talk Live with part 2 of why 63% of men are single. We have a second part to this, and we'll get into it then. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to get out of here right now and get to the gym and get that testosterone up. Thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow night on IG and YouTube. Thanks for doing the deep dive with me, and look forward to speaking to you on this tomorrow night. And we'll say goodbye to you here on Instagram. Good night from Toronto. And thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live here on YouTube and doing the deep dive with me on why 63% of men are single, which I totally am in agreement with, except for the part of the red pill. But for the most part, she is dead on. She is dead on with her subject matter, and we will go into part 2 tomorrow. But I hope you enjoy me.